Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. I'm your host, Steve Plum, Editor-in-Chief for SME Media. And it's my pleasure to be joined today by Erica Logan, Workforce Development Director of the Maritime Industrial Base Program, Joe Bardo, Program Leader of the U.S. Navy Talent Pipeline Program, and SME's Executive Director and CEO, Janine Koontz. Welcome to the show, everyone, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Pleasure to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Great. So we're recording this on October 1st, which kicks off National Manufacturing Month. So in addition to all the amazing technologies manufacturers will be showcasing and highlighting throughout the month, another key issue that affects companies of all sizes and across all verticals is talent, or more specifically, how to attract, train, and retain the next generation workforce, which is a perfect fit for our topic today, the critical role of workforce in manufacturing and maritime defense. Fortunately, our three panelists are all experienced leaders in this area and very passionate about workforce development. So Janine, I know this has been near and dear to your heart for a long time, both in your current role as CEO and your prior role as Chief Workforce Development. I was wondering if you could kind of set the baseline, about what the workforce shortages and talent gap right now is for manufacturers, and give an overview of where manufacturing is today in this regard and some of the key challenges that everyone is facing.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Like you said, it's something I've been kind of close to and as a team at SME with great partners like Joe and Erica, trying to tackle it. And unfortunately, right, it keeps staying in front of us. The predictions that we've all seen, keep moving out. It was before, it was like by the year 2015 and by the year 2020, and now it's by the year 2033, I think was the most recent one I saw. Still millions of talent shortages that we're going to have affecting manufacturing. And I don't think there's anything that doesn't come down to the workforce, the talent that drives what we do. I also would say there are probably no to few manufacturing companies who are not negatively impacted by workforce challenges. I think all of us hear that, and it doesn't matter really what sector, what size, what part of the country in the United States someone is, they are impacted. And the stark reality is these challenges that we face with workforce have significant and severe implications on our economic prosperity, our resiliency, and most importantly, I believe, and those on the panel, our national security. Yesterday, I happened to be attending an event held by Ford Motor Company. The CEO, Jim Farley, came out about a month ago talking about the essential economy and the importance of the skilled trades. And he wasn't just speaking to the automotive industry and the technicians that work on the vehicles, post-sale, but really all trades and all sectors of our nation's workforce. And it was interesting listening to the conversation. I will say, a number of CEOs were there across different sectors, looking at how data storage, even with AI and the advent of AI from a technology standpoint, requires data storage, and data storage requires more skilled trades. So the Secretary of Labor was there. I can mention dozens of CEOs and Jim Farley from Ford, and they're calling this out. And guess what comes up in the conversation? Sitting there listening and participating, and they start talking about the Navy, and they start talking about the needs of the targeted needs that the United States Navy has. But I think what's important is to think about that, years ago, as you said, Steve, I've been doing this for 25 years. The early days of the talent shortage was a lot around the discussion of the impact it had on a company. So the company, if they didn't have the right talent with the right skills, or that they had, vacant jobs, it was affecting their productivity, scrap, cost, production times, and inability, safety, big issues for companies that you could directly tie to talent shortages. Over the years, that moved on to an aggregation of those companies and their inability to maybe take on technology due to talent shortages. to really handicapping the industrial base as a whole and our nation in being, advanced and competitive in a technology competitive world, really trying to win the war of technology. That's the level that this has gotten to. So while SME has, covering all things manufacturing for all sectors, it is undoubtedly an important area for us to focus and help as much as possible with our defense capabilities as a national imperative. And so, yes, I think it's gone from some of the early stage conversations to the kind of conversations we're having today. So look forward to hearing more from Erica and Joe about what they see from their lens.
Yeah, that's a great segue for you, Erica, with the shout out from the event yesterday, mentioning the Navy, and to follow up with what Janine was saying, and the need on your side from the workforce program. I was wondering, first of all, can you tell us a little bit more about MIB and how the workforce challenges are affecting the Navy?
Absolutely. The Maritime Industrial Base program is a direct reporting program. MIB reports directly into the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition. So very much a Navy priority. We are the single accountable program office to assess, develop, integrate, and manage enterprise maritime industrial base efforts for the Navy, attempting to accelerate and facilitate improvements across multiple lines of effort. That sounds like a lot, and it is, but what we're really trying to do is sort of a non-traditional role for Navy, getting after issues we saw coming out of a greater than 40-year reduction in shipbuilding and maintenance capability and capacity, a peace dividend that resulted in, massive losses in defense and commercial supply chains, and certainly workforce. Sheer population growth challenges, not having enough people, and many other factors that got us in a position where we're really struggling to build ships and submarines on time. And that doesn't even take into account maintenance. So the Maritime Industrial Base is working on these issues, trying to collaborate with shipbuilders, both private and public shipyards. We're working with suppliers. Most of our supply base are small and medium suppliers. Obviously also working with large suppliers as well, but the challenges are greater, especially when you're talking about workforce with some of the small and medium suppliers. So we've really taken on a big task to try and get after several lines of effort. Workforce is one of those, and certainly the one nearest and dearest to my heart. But we also focus on supply chain improvements, making investments with suppliers that need new equipment, that want to move towards advanced manufacturing techniques. We also look at advanced manufacturing, additive manufacturing, 3D printing of parts. Also working with the shipbuilders on moving into future shipbuilding. So the Maritime Industrial Base is trying to get after a lot of things to help us get ships and submarines built on time.
You mentioned a lot of points that I wanted to follow up on. Supplier resiliency, new technologies, and collaboration and the changing workforce. You also mentioned that the 40-year reduction in shipbuilding, and for people like myself that really don't know what it takes to build a ship, can you tell us a little bit what it's entailed, how many companies, people, parts? I came from an automotive background. I know there's thousands of parts in a new car. What's it take to make a new ship or a submarine?
Steve, come over from automotive to submarines. Way cooler. The Columbia-class submarine, I'll just give you a picture. And the Columbia-class is the newest submarine that will replace the retiring Ohio-class. It's as long as 16 school buses. It takes 7 years to build. It's as long as the Washington Monument is tall. It takes 155 crew to man it. It's designed to be undetectable. 2.5 times the displacement of the Virginia class, 20.8 tons. designed for a 42-year service life, millions of parts, thousands of people, modules that come together that are shipped up the East Coast from one shipyard to another, a very complex vessel. Our workforce has to be focused on not only quality, but safety. Every day, those individuals have to think about the sailors that will man the submarine and making sure they get home to their families. We cannot cut corners when it comes to the workforce building ships and submarines. It's a massive undertaking. And not to mention a national security imperative. We have to have submarines as our first line of defense if we end up in wartime. No one likes to think about war, and it's certainly a hard sell to newer generations, right? But it's a reality and something we have to think about. I always phrase it as maintaining our peace, right? We want to maintain our peace. We want to live freely, come and go as we please, and we need a strong Navy in order to do that.
A lot of impressive stats. I'm sold. I'm a submarine guy now. Although my commute might be a little bit more difficult into work. Joe, I wanted to bring you into the conversation. Your experience is very very sound. You can share a little bit of that. But I know you started working on the town pipeline program about 5 years ago, and which SME is a national facilitator for. And you work with employers to meet kind of the new demands that are out there for the U.S. Navy and to support the U.S. Navy's defense industrial base. How does the program work?
Well, I'd like to back up just a little bit, Steve, with the backstory. And I think it kind of connects what Eric had talked about and what Janine did. So, back in like 2008, 9, 10, when the Navy was projecting the retirement of the Ohio-class submarines, the carriers, the entire demand for the recapitalization of the fleet that began, conceptually with design around 2014, 15, construction about 18, 19. And when they did this assessment of the American manufacturing base, back in 2008, 9, 10, they discovered, as Eric alluded to, was the last time we recapitalized the fleet back in 70s. About 35% of the American economy was in manufacturing. Today, that's about 11%, 12%, depending on how you look at it, where the data is. So, immediately, that screams risk. Right? Do we have the capacity in the American industrial base to build let's recapitalize the fleet? So the product of that was the creation of the Supplier Development Fund. And it's not part of the Navy's budget, but it's set aside congressionally to help employers build that capacity to meet the demands of the future of the Navy and the defense industrial base. And for the first 8 or 9 years, all that money went to infrastructure. We need a bigger building. We need a bigger crane. We need more machines. And as they started construction in 18, 19, they redid that assessment. And no surprise to anybody, the first time I met Whitney Jones and Matt Sermon was on the tail of that announcement, which is, man, we've got really big factories. We just don't have anybody in them to do the work. And I'll tell you, that's where the why in the road was. Historically, it's easy to help somebody build a piece of machinery or build a bigger building. But when you start getting involved with the people side of a business, that historically has never been how the government invests. Unless you go back to World War II, when they were actually building schools for workers and buildings and houses and families during World War II. But since World War II, that's never been it. The people side has always been the sole responsibility of the employer. So when we looked at that, and we looked at what is the employer's capacity in order to attract, recruit, hire, onboard, and retain that workforce, we discovered that it's not a core competency of American manufacturing. Gene and I have had this conversation for years through our association with the Association of Manufacturing Excellence, SME. We're really good at making stuff. We're really bad at people. So that's when Matt, Scott Papano, who was the PEO at the time, Whitney Jones, and Erica, about a year later, there was two big investments. One was on ATDM, and the other was for the Talent Pipeline program starting in late 20, early 21. And it's fundamentally the Talent Pipeline program that I run is based upon going to small and medium-sized employers, understanding them, and then helping them improve the performance of their talent acquisition and retention systems. And that investment was a complete, that was a big swing at a big problem where it was truly strategic, because the result of that investment is only in the ability of those small and medium-sized employers to own the problem, improve their talent acquisition and retention systems, create a more stabilized workforce, run a better business, and then they can provide more capacity to meet the Navy demand. So it was really a brilliant strategy and a really big swing and a lot of guts when we were going to make that investment via the program. So as you look across this small and medium-sized category, and we've defined that as companies under 50, companies between 51 and 300, and then 300 to 1,000, as in the small and medium category. That's at a single site where the site leader owns the P&L, generates the need for people, and is also responsible for the retention. But when you look at those small groups, and we know this so intuitively, that no two companies are alike. There's not a silver bullet. There's not well, just do this. When we go and sit with these companies, every company is different, and thank God they are, because they're all operating in a unique circumstance. They're in a unique business, and yet they represent what I call the heartbeat of the American economy. They're the 20-person machine shop. They're the 300-person forge. And those guys are just those small businesses, many of them family-run. And that's the real guts of the American economy. And it was brilliant when Matt and Scott and Erica and Whitney decided to limit the support from the TPP program to that group, because those groups of employers are generally the ones that are ignored in these discussions. Because, that's not such a big deal. They only hire 2 or 3 people a year. Well, when you're a 10-person company, 2 or 3 people is a huge deal. But because of the way we measure, we want to focus on all the bigs. Obviously, they hire a bunch of people. Yet that's the brilliance, because we're building constituencies. We're building relationships. And the Navy is able to show that we really believe that those small and medium-sized companies are the foundation of building those submarines and aircraft carriers and all that other stuff that's so important, which is also what makes the Talent Pipeline program so freaking fun. I mean, they just love to help. I mean, they love that somebody's there to help them, not tell them what they're supposed to do. So that's kind of the essence of the Talent Pipeline program. Is what do? We train, coach, encourage, and recognize employers to improve the performance of their talent acquisition retention system. And in exchange for that support that is at no cost to them, they give us their data so that we can see and develop trends to make the program better. But then they also agree to come together and network with other people in the program so we can actually build a maritime industrial base that we can be better as a team than we do individually. And we do that by regular events where they come together. They just sit down and talk about what they're doing. And, I did this the other day, and they said, well, do they share? Because they're also competitors. And I said, it's the coolest thing. They just come together because they all have the same problems. So that's the guts of this program. As Erica knows, we call it the secret sauce. And so now when we closed last year's cohort at 452 companies, across the country, we're on our way to 600 for this cohort. And those all create that connectivity, that we're all in this together, solving a common problem, which can't be a leader as we will look at the bigger picture that Janine works on.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with you a little bit on how you're tailoring the program to meet specific manufacturers' needs and some of the other items that you mentioned. But first, I wanted to bring Janine and Erica back in. And Joe had mentioned small and mid-size manufacturers, which is really the heartbeat of the industry. And just, if you can share some of your experiences with working with these companies and just how important they are to the overall manufacturing landscape.
Absolutely. Happy to chime in, Steve. I actually came out of industry. I joined the federal government late in my career and worked for a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business for many years, and literally did every job in that organization, and it prepared me for where I am today in this role with the Maritime Industrial Base. You're right, they're the heartbeat. Most of our suppliers are small and medium, so that tells you how critical they are to getting submarines and ships built on time and maintained. They're critical to our supply chain. We have to ensure, and it's one of the reasons the MIB exists, we have to ensure that we're doing all that we can to support them. And Joe spoke about his program, and that's all by design. We need to make sure they are viable. We need to make sure they have the workforce they need. We need to make sure they're not getting left behind in terms of equipment, advanced manufacturing techniques, even, new certification standards, for IT, even the basics, things that are expensive for small businesses to adhere to in terms of government requirements and policies. We have programs designed to help them. So we are very much focused on having a thriving industrial base, and that is largely made up of small and medium businesses.
Yeah, I think I'll add to a little bit. I won't take long because I think both Erica and Joe did a great job. And truthfully, it's kind of almost how it even came out at this event I mentioned down at Ford here in Detroit, and my hometown. It was citing the work that the Talent Pipeline program is part of the bigger portfolio that Erica's mentioning, and really kind of the all hands on deck, so to speak, attacking of the problem and the challenge that does include, as she said, everything that happens early stage, from pipeline development into the youth, right? They're going through the program that she oversees down into, the K-8 and the high schools and the workforce system. And then examples like Talent Pipeline program from what's happening in the industrial base. And from my perspective, I think that's both really important. I think it's not one or the other. We can't have all the work be in our workforce system and education system and bring the talent to the doors of employers that aren't really equipped with the tools and resources and practices that help attract that talent, develop that talent, and retain that talent. Conversely, if we stayed all inside of our supplier base, we would end up not having anyone show up at the door because we need to build the pipeline. So it really is great to see how it is a holistic process. And then kind of foot stomping a little bit about the small to mid-sized manufacturers, as you said, is the heartbeat of our manufacturing base. And I think that is true not only in defense, but in every sector of manufacturing. And the reality is it's very difficult for those small businesses to stay up to speed on all that's coming at them. That is just realistic, but they and their help not only affects our economy and our communities, but upwards towards those primes that are relying on their tier ones through their tier fours to be healthy and competitive and resilient. So we putting some attention on that heartbeat, as you said, Steve, is absolutely critical. And it's the area that needs it the most. So having those kinds of programs that are designed in a way that can meet them where they're at is paramount.
Yeah, workforce is a very broad definition, and talent, as it's commonly referred to now. We recently are distributing our 30 under 30. We named our 30 under 30 on a reason. It's just amazing stories from all these young professionals. But, the trick is to get the next batch of these potential 30 under 30 people. And, Erica, you had mentioned, I think, 8th grade is how early are you starting to try to reach these kids at that point? And what are some of the programs that you're working on in this area?
We're starting, we use K through 12. We are getting down into elementary school. We know that we need to expose young people, and not selfishly just to maritime manufacturing, right? But to careers, and start early because, young people, they can't be what they can't see. So we do try to focus early with activities for young people. We have curriculum that is very maritime centric. So, with submarine mission modules and shipbuilding missions, even simple things, take home activity sheets for young kids. We try to come up with educational programming that helps educators, right? If an educator has a break where they can do some lesson planning, what is something they can do quickly with their class? These are the types of resources that they're looking for, where it doesn't cost them a lot of money or they don't have to come out of their pockets for these things. So we try to, we have an educator leading this for us on the MIB workforce team. And she knows what educators need and has come up with a lot of programs that help teachers while also exposing students, again, as young as elementary school, to maritime trades, STEM, STEAM, you name it. And then we just try to make sure we add that fun, cool factor of ships and submarines. We know we have to build the pipelines early. We have to be very intentional about having a funnel of talent. And we know kids start thinking about, what they want to be when they grow up. I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. Then as you get older, you want to be something else, a fireman. So as they're thinking about these things, we want to expose them so that we become an option as they're thinking about what they do want to be when they grow up.
Yeah, I know some of the programs that SME is involved in that I've been exposed to. It's just amazing to see the interest in the high school, junior high in elementary school kids and when you expose them at an early age. And Joe, talking earlier with you, you had mentioned that it's not just necessarily um, a shortage of people, but it's really retaining and training the individuals once they start. And you had mentioned one stat to me about, I think, 30% was only 30% were maintained after the first year, and you had some success with the talent pipeline program and getting that up much higher. Can you share some of that experience?
You have to see this as a system. And when you look at this talent acquisition and retention system, this is the things Eric were talking about are about building the supply side of the equation. More candidates that are interested in entering the manufacturing space. Our focus is on the demand side of the equation. So it kind of goes this idea that nobody in America finds a job unless an employer offers them a job. So really, the predominant who owns the problem is the employers. So when you look at in America, we're at full employment, which basically means that anybody who wants a job can have a job. So when you think about an employer, when they enter the marketplace to start looking for talent, it starts with what is your demand, how many you need, in what areas. Second is, and probably more important, is the employers need to understand what is their value proposition with candidates. Why would somebody join your company? Also, why would somebody who's a high performer stay in your company? So, in the talent pipeline program, we apply all the continuous process improvement tool set. And that is, what is your current process from generation of a labor requirement to their first year anniversary on the job? Second is, what is the data you have to show whether or not you have a recruiting problem or a keeping problem? What we discovered over the last 4 years is that generally we can find candidates, but our biggest weakness is the retention side. So in the talent acquisition retention business, one of the cores of that is you can't out-hire a bad retention system. So when you look at this as a system, the first thing you got to fix is keeping the people that you do hire, because you don't have an unlimited flow of candidates that are qualified on the supply side of the equation. So, for example, when we do this, the first thing we do is sit down with them and we ask some very simple questions. How many W-2s did you issue last year? How many new people started? And how many people left? That is empirical data that will give you the first indication of the health of your talent acquisition and retention system. The company I mentioned to Steve earlier, when they actually did that analysis, they discovered that they were only retaining 30% of their new hires. So then you have kind of a why in the road. The first why is that data can't be right. Go look at that data again. I don't believe it. And those are the ones that are arrogant. And when they're arrogant, they say things like, well, young people today are just no good. They don't want to come to work. People today are terrible. I just wish they were like we were when 30 or 40 years ago. And I got to tell you, that was pretty scary 30 and 40 years ago. And it's not a lot better today. But And just an aside, young people today are 100 times more talented than we were. They're just different than us. The best companies have figured that out. But if you look at that data, what we really want and encourage our companies to do is say, I had no idea. And if they approach that problem with the same rigor that they approach other manufacturing problems, they can solve it. So how do you solve it? Well, you got to figure out, why do people stay and why do they leave? When does it happen? What's the profile? That data leads to root cause analysis. Root cause analysis leads to countermeasures. Implementing the countermeasures, measuring the results. And in the Talent Pipeline program, we call it the fifth metric scorecard. Every company measures cost, schedule, quality, safety, the first four. Rarely do they measure the fifth metric, which is their people. So if we can implement that and we understand the problem, we can fix it. And that's really the core competency that we're trying to develop for the companies that join the Talent Pipeline program, is give them that courage to lead. So we look at that today in the Talent Pipeline program. As of our last annual report, of those 452 companies, 233 of those companies are now at over 80% first-year retention. We're moving the needle, and it is because the companies are owning the problem.
Yeah, that's a huge jump, and something to be proud of, and companies, everybody should take note of that. Does it really start at the top of leadership and having that that sense throughout a company?
It really does. So I'll tell you a quick story is, and I tell this in the workshops. I say, if you were leading a 300-person manufacturing company, and all of a sudden half of your product that you shipped to your customer was getting shipped back to you for a quality error, and half your other customers canceled their orders because of poor quality, I asked the leader, who would be involved in that conversation? And they say, well, of course, everybody. Man, we're not making any money. Our customers not happy. We'd get the best minds in the room. We'd stop what we were doing. We'd gather the right data, do root cause analysis. We'd go to our customer, say, man, great. Said, so according to your data, you have only a 30% retention rate of new hires. Who's involved in that conversation? The HR person. I said, really? The HR person doesn't have anything to do with it. But we blame them for retention. So the step number one, my friend Mike Brawley at Kingsbury says this all the time. The first thing he learned in the Talent Pipeline program was talent acquisition and retention is an everybody problem. And I have to lead it as the senior executive of the organization, because it has to do with everybody in our company. It starts with ownership. I guess that's the first step of the recovery process, right?
Yeah, Joe, you had mentioned how things have changed over the past 30 years, and people may just have different skills, especially in the light of emerging technologies, which several, Erica and Janine, both referenced as well, whether it's additive manufacturing, automation, Industry 4.0. But I was wondering if Erica and Janine, you could share some insights on how this is affecting the workforce, the change in technology, and more importantly, what have been some of the success stories that successful programs that have helped address this.
Yeah, happy to chime in, and Janine, feel free to jump in as well. I think what we used to call technology, now certainly for me, we refer to it as advanced manufacturing. I think it's such an opportunity. And Janine mentioned earlier that tech has almost outpaced people, right? But in terms of what we're trying to get after, and Joe talked about these generational differences, right? And these kids don't want to work, and our executive director says, the cavemen said the same thing. Our kids don't gather like, they used to, so he says that's gone back. That's as old as time to say that about these generational differences. But I think it's an opportunity, right? Kids, as Joe stated, and Janine alluded to, they work differently. They work smarter, not harder. Things like cobots and robots, which are some of the things we're supporting with small and medium manufacturers and certainly encouraging the shipbuilders to adopt, that attracts these young people. Printing of parts. I mean, how cool is that to see a massive part being printed, which Maritime Industrial Base is doing right down in Danville, Virginia, at the Additive Manufacturing Center of Excellence. These digital transformation initiatives, AI, it's such a buzzword. And to me, I can spell it, but these kids know what AI is. They know how to use Chat GPT to their advantage. They love things that are operated by remote control. So I think as we move into and try to attract this new collar workforce, technology is what's going to do it. We have to buy down labor demand with technology, and to the extent we can use these advanced manufacturing techniques to attract these young folks, that's exactly what we need to be doing. Janine, over to you if you have anything to add there, but I'm excited about it.
I just have to say, I love these kids just aren't like they used to be, right? That, it's like one of those passages of all of us just do now to the next generation. So I loved that. I'm going to remember that. And I think you hit it really on the head. And speaking to, that kind of comment about technology outpacing the people is exactly as you said, it's an opportunity. We have technology just sitting there waiting for us to harness. And I think one of the things we don't do a great job of as an industry, it's not even that people have misconceptions of these pathways and these jobs. They don't even know they exist. And then when they do know that they exist, we are not the best marketers as an industry. That's just not what we do. We make things, we build things. And so showcasing what a technology rich, complex, interesting, cool industry this is the opportunity we have. And so we have all the pieces and parts. We have one of the coolest industries. Look at what Erica just talked about with all those statistics on our submarines. And go down to any sector, and then the technology they get you to use is rich inside of manufacturing. So the opportunities are there. We just need to harness those in a way that looks different than how we did it before. Again, blaming those old generations. A great story I like to tell is there was a job posting this gentleman was talking about for additive, and he was looking for a CAD CAM individual who was familiar with CAD CAM. The job description went out, and he really wasn't getting many applicants. And then when he changed it to talk about that the person would be designing prosthetics for amputees, right, that could get their mobility back for veterans, they got a bunch of resumes, and they hired someone quickly because they translated, not only did you get to use technology, but in this sector you get to do really freaking cool things that matter. And that is what I think harnessing what Joe touched on and what Erica touched on can bring it all together in a way that helps accelerate the talent pipeline that comes into this important sector.
Steve, I'll add too. I hear as I go out some of the folks say, my grandfather worked at the shipyard 40 years. That's the last thing he wanted from me. He was maimed, or safety concerns, and this is why it's so important to expose people to these roles, to let them actually get onto a shipyard or go to a supplier, to give them that realistic job preview so they understand this isn't shipbuilding of 50 years ago. Shipyards are modernizing. Safety, while still a concern, isn't what it was years ago. And we have to really expose folks to the role so they can see and understand that, shipbuilding is moving with the times. Is it a challenge, and can it take a long time? Absolutely. But I think getting on a shipyard or going to a supplier site and being exposed to the roles is critical to attracting people to this industry.
Steve, I'd follow on with that. What Erica said is when you look at the why, when we first started this program, when you look down into the tier 3, 4, 5 down there, we had a lot of companies didn't even know they were part of the defense, the maritime industrial base. I mean, all they did was, well, I just make this part and I send it to this place. But we found them because they were identified as a key part of somebody's else's part in the process. And now one of the things that the MIP program has been excellent at is including them to let them know that you are helping defend America. You are as important as a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine. This is important work. You're just not welding or machining or doing that stuff. You're building aircraft carriers and submarines. Your little way, that's a compelling argument for young people today. They want to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. They want to feel like what they do is making a difference. And, we were stuck in, you're just lucky to have a job and we can do this. And, and, oh man, I get really excited by coming to a job that says, oh, you're just lucky you don't get killed today. You're lucky you don't get hurt and we're going to pay you. I mean, that's not going to attract the kind of talent that one of these companies. And then the last thing I'll say is, we're just not looking for people. We're looking for good people that want to be on our team. One of the things we teach is the best companies in America, forever, it's hire for fit, train for skill. Get the right people, and then leverage these resources to train them to do the work you need them to do, and then retain them for life. That is possible. That's going on every day. And part of what we do in TPP is give those companies the courage to do this work, to be a better company, and then provide that extra capacity to the Navy that we most desperately need.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Erica was talking about earlier at the start, just how complex the manufacturing is and how many different companies, different people are involved in it. And when they see the bigger picture and they're part of the bigger picture, it really makes a difference. And, to follow up on that, I was wondering if all three of you can talk a little bit about just the importance of collaboration throughout the manufacturing ecosystem, whether it's a government agency, an educator, a prime OEM, or a supplier, or an SME and other third-party groups.
Yeah, I'll start by using the Michigan Maritime Manufacturing Initiative as an example, and it has been a very successful initiative for the maritime industrial base. We successfully brought together federal government, state, local government, training partners, community colleges, educational programs, certainly SME, to all work together collaboratively to get a thing done. And I think that is so critical. Federal government, yes, we bring things to bear, certainly funding, but to make these initiatives successful and to make them last, you have to have buy-in from state and local government. The school systems have to be a part of it. When you're trying to get curriculum out, when you are trying to educate the general public about shipbuilding careers and all of the roles that are available, we have to work with the manufacturing associations to communicate to their membership, and to just get the whole community involved. I always say people matter, right? This is more than jobs. It's people, it's communities, it's your neighborhood, it's my neighborhood, And we all have to be working together very intentionally to make these things successful. If only MIB tries to do these things alone, it won't be lasting. And we've had such a great partnership, and we've been able to get out across multiple areas. Recruitment and attraction across the state of Michigan, training across the state, accelerated training program at Macomb Community College, educational partnerships working with SME and other training providers, placement working with state government, local government, Apex accelerators, the list goes on. That is the success of that M3 initiative. It's everyone collaborating very intentionally, championing a thing, which in this case is maritime manufacturing, shipbuilding, and it has been a success. Macomb is on track to train 360 folks in welding and machining. Those individuals are being placed. We'll be tracking retention for those individuals. Talent Pipeline program is engaged, looking at demand signal, engaging with suppliers in the region. Janine is working very closely with us, Prime High Schools, educational initiatives, the list goes on. This is how it works. This is what right looks like when you bring everybody together, collaborating and rallying around a common cause.
It's how America solves its problems. That's how we do it.
Yep, it's a whole nation approach. I think Erica said it really well. And that's, if we go back, I think, the collaboration of even the three of us, which extends way beyond the three, as Erica listed many, and coming together to do something bigger than ourselves. I think Joe also said that statement, which is what we need to do. And I think this is just one signal of that, and hopefully others join in to do something that's really bigger than all of us.
And I just have to say, I've been in this business a long time, Janine, Erica has. The Navy stepping into this space, it's not a straight line. It's not really clean because of all those people and agendas. And I mean, so we have, and we kind of put them in the employers. That world's really complicated. All the people who train people, that's really complicated. All the facilitators, state governments. I mean, this is a very complex, deep, regionally specific challenge that it takes some courage to jump into the space and get stuff done. And we're making really good progress. Often not clean, often not as good as we want it to be, often not as fast as we need it to be. But this is draining the swamp kind of work, not killing the alligators.
And I think all of you have alluded to this, and Joe, that we were talking about earlier, that it's not easy. It's a evolving, dynamic process, but full of continuous improvements. And thanks to organizations like MIB and TBP and SME, we're working forward in that direction. I know we're getting close on time, but I wanted to give everybody a chance to give some closing thoughts and or a shout out to a website if for more information. Janine, if you want to kick us off on that.
Oh, sure. I think, I love the closing there of just, kind of teaming up and doing what we can to contribute. So certainly an honor. And I believe what the Navy, as Joe pointed out, is doing certainly has a very targeted outcome for our Navy talent. But it really does, no pun intended, all boats rise. The work and the investments and the time and the energy, the awareness that's being built. As Erica said, when you're in, an elementary school, the Navy understands that not all those people are going to go, as she said, into a shipyard or work on a submarine, but they will be exposed into STEM, manufacturing, and hopefully into the Navy. So I think that's really important. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, since it might be like my last moment here, is just we as a national facilitator, working with TPP and with the support of the Navy, SME is holding a SME Talent Pipeline Summit on October 22nd in Southfield. It is an event, as Joe said, targeted towards those small to mid-sized manufacturers, but they do need to be registered Navy suppliers because there's Navy support that's being provided. So anyone interested from that meets those qualifications, could learn more about those resources, at the sme.org website. And we'd love to see you on October 22nd.
Erica, as far as more information on MIB?
Yeah, I'll say 250,000. That's the number of folks we need over the next 10 years to build ships and submarines. Might you be one of that 250,000? BuildSubmarines.com, that's our platform. There is a career portal there, lots of education resources for teachers, lots of information about the roles that are available in the maritime industrial bases, so diverse, and all the potential in the careers within the maritime industrial base. Also encourage you to follow MIB's Journey. Maritime Industrial Base program is on LinkedIn. Happy for you to follow us on LinkedIn as well, and certainly appreciate you all having me.
Joe, I'll give you the final word here.
Yeah, what a privilege it is to be with this group of professionals and working on this really hard and meaningful problem. Our constituency and who we represent are those small and medium-sized employers. We're never going to leave their side. And if you need help, give us a call. You can go on the LinkedIn site, U.S. Navy Talent Pipeline Program. Just by having us on this podcast recognizes the importance of this investment, not only to the employers, but to our country. So we're truly privileged to be part of this great team, and we've got to get it done. We've got to work here. This is not a situation where we can throw up our hands and say it's just too hard.
Well, thanks to all of you, Joe, Erica, and Janine. Very, very insightful on this critical issue, and to give us our own plug to find out the latest manufacturing news. Visit us at advancedmanufacturing.org, and for our other podcasts, please remember to like and subscribe.